welcome. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Bill Accavelli with NC State's Industry Extension Solutions, Services, for a brief remarks and introduction of today's speaker. Thank you. Bill?
Thanks, Susan. Good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to introduce Lisa. Lisa and I have known each other for a while through our mutual involvement in Association for Manufacturing Excellence as voluntary board members in different regions of the country. But Lisa has a passion for leaders to and people in general to integrate continuous improvement with the respect for people, and she is actively doing that daily through her firm, Engage Excellence, where she consults and coaches and trains people on that within organizations. Prior to that, she was the director of Enterprise Excellence Program for Delaware Manufacturing Extension Partnership, one of our peer groups. And prior to that was in industry, but Lisa has a Bachelor's of Science degree in Chemical Engineering from the University of Delaware. Go Blue Hens.
Yep.
And is currently director of the people-centric leadership for AME. I'm sure she'll tell you more about that within this presentation. So thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. So it's great to be here, everybody. And I just want to, full disclosure, I'm not the greatest speaker. I adore this topic, but part of the thing I like about people-centric leadership is actually interacting and learning with other people. So normally when I do these sessions, they're much smaller sessions, and I'm able to interact with the group that I'm talking to. And it's such a fun experience and rich conversation. But with the size of the group today, that's really not possible. So I give you that with full disclosure. So part of this presentation, I have polls and I have a couple exercises. And if you want to use the chat to make comments, please do. So if everyone would please participate as we go through. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to be able to have this experience with you. So thank you all for showing up, and thank you, Bill, Susan, and the NCMEP for actually inviting me here today to talk to you guys. So as Bill said, Bill and I do go way back, probably too far back to, we won't say any years how far we go back. But this program was actually kind of initiated as part of the AME, the Association of Manufacturing Excellence. And so a couple of years ago, actually probably in 2010, 2011, the AME, we were working, and we were like, oh my gosh, well, everybody's working on continuous improvement, but when we think about continuous improvement, there's something missing here. We're not where we need to be. And so we started down this path of understanding what is this thing called leadership, respect for people, and we termed it people-centric leadership. So what I'm going to go through for you today is kind of a high-level summary overview of our people-centric, our core offering of AME around people-centric leadership, our People-Centric Leadership 101 class. So it was developed in conjunction with the AME. And I'm here on behalf of them to actually present it to you. So for those of you who don't know, what is this thing, the AME, the Association for Manufacturing Excellence? It's kind of a cool organization because it's all volunteers. And we are the premier organization for the exchange of knowledge, right? So it's a group of people. We get together. It started about 30 years ago for organizations to share best practices around lean and continuous improvement. And if you'd like to get involved, if you don't know about the AME, it's a really great organization. We always are looking for more people to get involved, volunteer, so we can share and learn best practices together. So this is my agenda for this session, and we're just going to start off and talk about, well, what is people-centric leadership and why do we need it? Okay. We're going to talk about the core leadership behaviors. What are they? What do they look like? And then management systems and how management systems work into creating this people-centric culture. we're going to kind of wrap up with developing capability and the importance of that. It's a core element of lean and any great organization or enterprise excellence. And then we're going to briefly talk about this link between people-centric leadership and lean and CI tools. Like, they're really not separable. And then we should have some time for some questions and answers at the end. So, as I said, was back in 2010, 2011, the AME, we were an organization trying to help promote the idea of lean and continuous improvement in really globally around the world. And one of the things people are saying is, yeah, we're doing all this work, but nothing seems to stick. And somebody said, well, you know what? There are these two pillars when we think about lean and continuous improvement, or the Toyota production system. And the two pillars are continuous improvement and respect for people. And so we've put a lot of emphasis on the continuous improvement side of things, like all the different tools, 5S, Kanban, flow, value stream mapping, problem solving. But we forgot this whole pillar of respect for people. And what does it look like? And probably we need as much development in the respect for people pillar as we put into this continuous improvement and the tools end of things. And so we realized, hey, we need to do something. Now, this picture, I show it as pillars. You have a pillar for continuous improvement and a pillar for respect for people. But in reality, they're not these separate entities. They're intimately intertwined. Okay. So it's not separate. Somebody said to me once as we were going through this presentation, they said, it's more like a candy cane, with the red and white stripes together. And I think that's probably a better description, or maybe even the strands of DNA. So within the AME, we said we defined this whole body of knowledge around respect for people. We called it people-centric leadership. And so what is people-centric leadership? Well, this is the definition that we came up with back in 2010. It's a culture where every day everyone goes home fulfilled by pursuing excellence and where everybody flourishes. So that's the AMA definition of people-centric leadership. I think there's a couple misnomers about it. First of all, we call it people-centric leadership, and then in the definition, we call it a culture. So it truly is a culture. And when we think of people-centric leadership and we think of leaders, everybody is a leader in some way. So as we go through and we talk about all the behaviors and attributes, we're really including everybody when we talk about people-centric leadership. So also, people-centric leadership is not a state of being that you achieve it, you get there. It's kind of a continuum. And on that continuum, sometimes there's situations which you might be more people-centric and other situations where you might not be as people-centric as you might think. So it's definitely a continuum. I also think there's a huge misnomer about, well, people-centric leadership is just caring. And while caring is a fundamental component of people-centric leadership, I think the other portion that we forget is sometimes caring too much can drive negative behaviors, which result in behaving in a non-people-centric way. And so I liken this to the helicopter parents that become too protective, to control things, as opposed to letting people fail on their own. Okay. So caring too much can be a negative. It also can be a negative and exhibit itself in terms of favoritism. So when we talk about people-centric leadership and caring, yes, it's a component, but there are aspects of that, like anything, that can be negative. And so on that end, if we think about people-centric leadership is about balancing needs, okay? And so what you're doing as a people-centric leader is you're balancing the needs of the organization with the needs of the individual. And there's many individuals that you're balancing with, right? So, so if you think about this, it's not about caring to the point to the exclusion of the needs of the organization. You have to balance it. And when we think about people-centric leadership, you're not balancing it perfectly in the middle. Sometimes the needs of the organization outweigh the needs of the individual. There's something that happens. You need people to work overtime. You need them to put in more effort. So as a result, you, you the needs of the organization outweigh the needs of the individual. And sometimes individuals are going through something where we need to give them more flexibility. They need more support. So it's really a balancing act, but it's really never that you're always right in the center of that, scale there. So if you're in our lean community, right, you have to have a house. And so our AME team put together this PCL framework. So this is the AME PCL framework. At the base of our house is the basic thinking and mindset. So, together as we go through the workshop, we actually explore, what does this mean? What is the basic thinking and mindset of value, respect, and care for people? What does that look like? What mindset do you have to have? Because it's that mindset that's actually gonna support the pillars and drive the behaviors and the management systems in our organization. So the two pillars are process improvement and then capability development. Inside of our house, we have our leadership behaviors of self-reflection, humility, building relationships, communication, listening, celebration, and recognition. When we first started this and putting this together and trying to develop it, we had like 20 different behaviors. And we said, well, that's too crowded in our house. So we really need to narrow it down. And so we said, well, what are those core things that we really want to touch on as we talk about what this thing is, this thing called people-centric leadership? So we narrowed it down to these 5. And then, so also in our house, besides the leadership behaviors, we also have management systems. Okay. And again, there's lots of management systems in an organization. We said the core key one that we feel is so important to discuss is really goal setting, feedback, and alignment. But all the management systems that we have are actually either supporting or degrading our people-centered culture. And then the roof of our house is, if we do this all well, we're going to achieve our value-driven purpose of the organization. People are going to feel respected and valued. We're going to fulfill their value-driven purpose, as well as the business and the whole community. So that's our framework, our house of, or our PCL framework, okay? House of People-Centric Leadership. So first exercise. So if you walked away, you're not paying attention, if you could just kind of wake up now. 3 words of great leadership. Okay, what I want you to do is I want you to think of the best leader that you have ever worked with. Okay, the best leader that you have ever worked with. And without overthinking it, I want you to type 3 words that describe great leadership into the chat. And then don't hit enter. When I count to 3, I want everybody to post at the same time those 3 words. Okay? So everybody think about think about that leader. Think about 3 words that you would use to describe that leader. Okay? And then when I count to 3, I want everyone to post together. Okay? 1, 2, 3, post. We might break Zoom by doing this. All right. Understanding, listen, compassionate, knowledgeable, encouraging, honest, servant, honest, trustworthy, reliability, supportive, challenging, empathetic, accountable, respectable, encouraging, patient, down to earth, patient, teacher, humble, trust, support, communication. All right. So wise, listening, advocates, empowering, mentor, good communication, kind, direction, humble. So as you go through and as you look at this list, if you guys are just scrolling through as I am right now, okay, we have a lot of different words to describe what is great leadership. Okay. Now, if you look at it, when I asked you to do this, what's amazing is you all didn't put the same 3 words, right? They're all, for the most part, I don't know if there's any that are the same. I'm not that quick. I'm not that quick. as you do it, right, no three are the same, or no two are the same. They're different. Okay. And so I actually borrowed this or adapted this exercise from an exercise that I experienced at the United States Naval Academy. The Association of Manufacturing Excellence, they did a leadership conference in association with the Naval Academy, and they had the professors and leadership from the Naval Academy talk about leadership in the Naval Academy. And they started out and they actually had us draw what does great leadership look like. And of course, we all, like you, in describing the words, we all drew something different. And they said, that's, when people come in, when the midshipmen come into the U.S. Naval Academy, they all have a different perspective of what is great leadership. And so here in the Navy, we have to define what is great leadership. They said, because we have, actually, they said we have to define it. And then we actually we spend the next 4 years training our midshipmen on what great leadership looks like. What is it? They said, because we put 23-year-old testosterone charged males up in fighter jets that have enough firepower to take out our nation's capital, and we are 40 miles down the road. So we need to know that our leaders know how to make the right decisions. And so at the U.S. Naval Academy, we define leadership and then we train people. And so actually, I am going to run this poll, the leadership poll. I ask you guys, like, do you guys have good definitions of great leadership? Do you, and if you do have this really great, robust definition of what is great leadership, how do you support leaders in terms of developing them and creating it? So, Susan, if you could go ahead and launch that poll
Okay.
of what statement best describes your organization today? So we have clearly defined leadership expectations and leaders consistently model them all the way up to 5. We have neither clearly defined leadership expectations nor structured development approach. So where are you guys in this organization today? Where are you guys in this scale in your organization today?
We're going to give it about another 15 seconds, folks, if you'll go ahead and submit your answers. Still have a few coming in, so I'm going to give it a few more seconds.
All right. So,
Okay, we'll go ahead and Lisa, I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results.
all right. Thank you. Okay, so we're all over the board. And some organizations are doing a really great job. Okay. Um, it's kind of funny. It's almost flat. Never seen that. But I think it's really important. And it's a really big aha. A lot of times people will say, oh, well, we have core values and different things. But really having clear expectations, I think, is important. And the organizations, I think, that do this well, they do have clearly defined expectations for leadership, and they do have programs to help develop their leaders in their organizations. So, um, so what's our goal? What we're really trying to do is we're trying to, as leaders, our goal is to create engaged communities to involve everybody in the organization. So Gallup has been measuring employee engagement since 2000. Okay. I don't know if you've ever seen any of or read any of the Gallup polls, but the engagement polls, but every year they come out with a new one. And what's really interesting, I think, about the engagement study that's done by Gallup is if you look at it, it stays pretty flat over time. It's about somewhere between 20 to 30%, depends on your industry. But it's around somewhere in the 20 to 30% of people that are actually engaged, all right? And so like we have the people that are engaged, that are actually actively rowing. You have like the bulk of it, which is like 50 to 60% that are um, just kind of there. And then you have this other part, which they actually say they're trying to actively disengage and they might be trying to sink the boat. So apparently, even though we recognize the importance of engagement, it's really not, we haven't done too much to actually move the needle. And engagement is important. I mean, estimates from Gallup, I think it costs somewhere between, 450 to $600 billion a year in lost productivity. So we're really looking for an engaged culture, but what are we doing, right? What are we doing? Um, so what's the problem, right? And part of it is this whole problem of perception versus reality. And actually, these numbers they're a little bit dated, but they're pretty relevant today. And it's why we have all these comic strips like Dilbert and The Bad Boss and stuff like that. But 70% of leaders rate themselves as inspiring and motivating. And then 82% of employees actually see their leaders as fundamentally uninspiring. There have been numerous studies that have also shown that like 65% of employees would forego a pay raise in order to see the direct supervisor fired. That's kind of a scary statistic that 65% of the people would actually give up a pay raise to see the direct supervisor fired. So there's this kind of disconnect here. And it's not that leaders, okay, they have intent and they think that intent is actually translating to reality, and it's not. And so, as leaders, we need to take a better look at ourselves, even though we intend to be people-centric leaders or we intend to be engaging. That might not be the experience that the employee is feeling. So what's the role of the manager? And so in any organization, it's really the manager, the direct supervisor, that is going to make the highest contribution to engagement in an organization. So this is actually from the most recent Gallup workplace research. Okay, so it's the person that you work with every day. It's because that's the person that is providing the day-to-day employee experience. And it's not just the manager, it's also our colleagues and coworkers that work with us that are actually contributing to our level of engagement in the workplace. And so, but the C-suite, the people at the top can have a big influence on it. So executive leadership is not that they don't play a role, but it's critically important that that they're supporting this. Okay, so executive leadership creates the condition, managers create the daily experience, and employees their response is trust, psychological safety, engagement, productivity, success. And so I think what's important is in some organizations, managers can sometimes act as a buffer, but that makes it takes a toll on managers, right? If they're not having that support of the executive leadership. So if executive leadership is creating these conditions, that actually drives the managers to create that daily experience. Okay. So we all play a role. At the core of, so as we think about creating environments, the reality is it's really our responsibility to create an environment that will inspire people. We can't order people to do their best. We can't make them be engaged. What we have to do is we have to create an environment that will inspire people. And so this actually is talking to me, it speaks to the core mindset of control. And there's always that moniker, right? Who's the only person you can control? Well, it's yourself, right? But I think the bigger question or the better question to ask is, how much of your day do you spend trying to control other people versus trying to control yourself? Because in controlling yourself, you have the ability to create the environment. Trying to control other people is just trying to make them do what you want. So as you think about people-centric leadership, it's really focused on yourself and what you're doing to create that environment, okay? As opposed to trying to control other people. So as we think about our framework, we talk about and we explore in a lot of detail, what is this basic thinking and mindset? What does it look like beyond just that whole concept of what do I do? What do I do to create that environment? You know, what is my contribution? There's more about the mindset that we explore and we can explore. And so we then dive into the leadership behaviors and we start with self-reflection. So just another exercise. We all know about Gemba walks, right? We do Gemba walks, we go to Gemba. What is the purpose of that? As a leader or an individual going to Gemba, what is the purpose of going to Gemba? Quickly in the chat, what is the reason? Why do we do that? Why do you go to Gemba? What is the purpose of going to Gemba? Involvement, alignment. Oh, what is Gemba? Gemba is where the work is done. So in the Toyota production system, they talk about doing Gemba walks. It means going through, seeing the work, going out on the shop floor, going to where the work is done. That's Gemba. Understand the process, get the information you need. Look at issues through the lens of process improvement, deeper understanding. Okay, exactly. Yes, absolutely. Yes, all those things. Everything you put in there. Learn from the experts, create relationships. Oh, absolutely. Gain a deeper understanding of the work. They do a BEA translates to, okay, so they're looking to see how it's all contributing up into the bigger picture of the organization. See what the actual conditions are. I'm not sure. I don't think I saw this, but did anybody put in there to evaluate themselves? Okay. So the Gemba, the workplace, is actually a reflection of the leader. So when you go to Gemba, I agree with everything you said there. All those reasons, those are reasons why you go there. But I believe in the Toyota production system, they would actually say is to evaluate and to see yourself. Okay. So when you think about people-centric leadership, the whole concept of self-reflection is key. The practice of regularly reflecting, journaling, and taking accountability for the conditions around you. Okay. I think they've done studies, and I think 70% or higher of executives, CEOs in the Fortune 500 actually journal regularly. Okay. So reflection journaling is important. And self-reflection actually begins with understanding who you want to be. Okay. Who is the person that you want to be, the person that you want to come, the impact that you want to have. And that really is kind of the foundation of self-reflection. All right. So humility. Humility is another important behavior or trait. And it was interesting before this webinar this morning. I'm like, well, wait, can you actually build humility? So I ChatGPT'd it. And they actually said, you know, humility, we seem to think of it as a personality trait, but it actually is a learned behavior. Okay. And so you actually can learn humility. And I think this is really astute. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. So humility is important. So we have another fun exercise here. If you could launch the poll. I have 3 questions for you, multiple choice questions. And this is from the book Factfulness by Hans Rosling. right? So these three questions: in all low-income countries around the world today, what percentage of girls finish primary school? So you have three choices: 20, 40, and 60%. There are 2 billion people in the world today, age 0 to 15 years old. How many children will there be in 2100 according to the United Nations? 2, 3, or 4? And then how many people in the world have some access to electricity? 20, 50, or 80? All right.
We'll give folks another 30 seconds or so.
Okay. So this is actually from the book Factfulness by Hans Rosling. He was a physician, a Swedish physician, and he spoke at conferences around the world on the state of the world. And he actually had 13 questions that he asked, and I just pulled 3 of them from his little questionnaire that he did. So, in all low-income countries around the world today, what percentage of girls finish primary school? It's actually 60%. And then the second question, there are 2 billion people in the world today. How many will there be in 2100? It's actually 2 billion. And then how many people in the world today have access to some electricity? It's actually 80%. The keyword being some access. Okay. So I'm not sure how you did. But what's really interesting about this is there's a lot of things that we think we know, or we just make, based on what our perspective and our view is, we think we know the answer. And so he actually did this, as I said, he had this, I don't know, 13, 14 question kind of survey, and he would present this at conferences. And he was surprised and shocked at how little people who should know the responses to these questions, how little they actually knew. And he actually starts the book out and he said, if I gave this survey to a bunch of apes and they randomly checked off A, B, and C, they would have done better than the experts. Okay. And he said, part of the problem is we become so immersed in what we know, we think we know, and we are not willing to explore what else is out there. So humility is important. Humility is a core element. It's really it's a central element of continuous improvement, because continuous improvement is actually based on the premise that there's a better way than the way you're doing it now. So you have to be able to be humble enough to actually accept that there's a better way. So actually, I think I heard a thing from Jeff Bezos just recently, and he stated that the most intelligent people are the people that change their mind. They're open to changing their mind, to learning. So curiosity is the foundation of humility. It actually drives humility. It drives continuous improvement, and it drives learning. So building relationships, somebody mentioned, I think in the chat, the importance of relationships and going to Gemba, right? Building relationships are key. So if we want people engaged, like we like to do work with people that we like and we know. And so building relationships are key. There is there's been a 75-year long study on happiness out of Harvard. And it talks about what makes the good life. I actually, this is a picture of Robert Waldinger, who is the current leader of that study. There's a great TED Talk on this as well, so you can watch that if you're interested. And he also came out with a book called The Good Life. I think it was like 2 years ago now. And it talks about the importance of relationships and actually building a good life, but also in our work and the work that we do. And so relationships are key. So I have another poll for you. Okay. And in his book, he said, the best investment in your future self is to build relationships. So if that's true, okay, if the best investment in your future self is to build relationships, I want to know how much of your time in your workday that you are actually working or investing in building relationships at work? How much of that time? Okay. How much of your time are you actually investing in building relationships in work? Less than an hour, 1 to 2 hours, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6+. How much of your time? In a day. That's in a day. Sorry. I should have said that. Sorry about that. How much your time in a day are you spending in one day? Are you spending? The best investment in your future self. I highly recommend the book.
We'll give it a couple more seconds.
All right. But if you want to get a synopsis of the study, the TED Talk is excellence. And if you just go into TED and type in Robert Waldinger's study, you'll see it. So, all right. I wish I could talk to the people that said 4 to 6 and 6+ hours, but the name of the book is called The Good Life. It's by Robert Waldinger and his colleague that he's working with currently on this study. So the reality is, and I tell this to people, is every single interaction that you have with somebody is an opportunity to build a relationship, and to recognize that as you go through your workday, every interaction that you have is an opportunity to build a relationship. And I remember, like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years ago, somebody said to me, what was his name? Can't think of the guy, the psychologist, William Glasser. He once said, wouldn't the world be a wonderful place if before anybody said anything or did anything, right? Before anything came out of your mouth, before you took any action, they asked themselves, how is what I'm going to do? How is what I'm going to say or do going to impact my relationship with the other person? Is it going to strengthen it or is it going to weaken it? Imagine what the world would be like if we really cared about the relationships. So every single second in your day is an opportunity to build a relationship. So seize it. So communication and listening is also critically important. Okay. And so in a people-centric culture, we talk about both nonverbal communication as well as the art of listening. And so many times communication, like I've been, for those of you who know Bill, I work with the MEPs. I've been in hundreds of organizations, talked to probably thousands of people. And one of the biggest problems that they have is poor communication. And so I think the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. And so there's two aspects, right? There's verbal, right? The words that we say, as well as nonverbal communication. This is the Moravian communication model. And in any face-to-face, when I say face-to-face, I would include also on the phone, right? So you can hear the voice. We communicate with more than just word. Actually, only 7% of the message that we are communicating, okay, is actually being communicated. The thinking, feeling, the meaning behind the message is actually being communicated verbally. The other 93%, I always call it nonverbal, but he calls it nonverbal and vocal, and I always lump them together, perhaps incorrectly. But as you think about it, though, if you think about nonverbal, if you look at the men in the upper hand corner, they're facing off. That's telling you there's conflict. A fight is about to start. And then you see the young woman touching her neck. That's an indication. They call it the self-touch. That's probably indicating some type of anxiety. Okay. And then if you look at the gentleman in the lower right-hand corner, he looks upset, maybe angry. And then if you look at the baby at the bottom, you see at the eyes, it's surprise. So there's nonverbal communication. We're expressing our thinking and feeling through not just our words. The thing about nonverbal communication is it can be very cultural. Okay. So in some cultures, standing and getting it up in somebody's face actually is the way that they talk, whereas in other cultures it isn't. So nonverbal communication can be cultural. Even subcultures in an organization itself. And then there's the vocal aspect of it, the tone, the pitch, the pace, the rhythm, the volume. And I always think of Martin Luther King's speech, "I have a dream," right? You can, even though I see the picture and I hear his voice, and it's powerful, it's sending a message, it's strong. Okay. And um, all that is communicating a message. Okay. And so, like, if you think about a young child, if they're excited, they're happy to be there, their voice is high raised, it's high pitched, they're excited. So that's communicating a message. Okay. And so we have to be aware of what we're thinking and feeling inside. Okay. Because that is being communicated to the world. All right. And we can all read it. We can all read it. So, yes, this is in terms of verbal, the words do matter, right? The choice of words do matter. So I'm not saying that they don't, but there's a lot that's being communicated without speaking any word. Okay. It was funny, a colleague of mine the other day, my son graduated from college and I went to the graduation and he asked me about the speaker, the keynote speaker. And I went, he's like, oh, and I laughed because I didn't say a word. It was just the expression and the noises I made. And he realized that it was less than stellar. So nonverbal communication. I always tell people too, it's not about thinking about what you're saying, what you're doing. It's about being very conscious of what's going in your mind at the time. And so we also need to think and explore the whole concept of listening. And listening is the golden key that opens the door to relationships. So I have another poll. How many of you guys actually have taken a class in listening? Active or reflective listening? How many people have done that? How many people have taken a class in active or reflective listening? I think it's interesting, Arlissa. Yeah, we're losing a lot in our communication when we are not face to face or even, talking to each other. And the challenge with, I'm sure as you all know, at least with me, the challenge with written is you lose the emotion and the thinking, the meaning behind the message that you're sending. And it can be misinterpreted as well, right? It can be misinterpreted. Where does one take? Go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and we'll share the results for you, Lisa.
Okay.
There we go.
So a lot of you have, that's awesome. So somebody asked, where can you take a class? I don't, maybe Bill, for your community, I'm sure you have resources that provide active listening or um, reflective listening classes. Usually schools or community places have classes. So they're worth taking, right? Because listening is a learned skill. Just because you have two ears does not mean that you're actually listening, right? When we're actually listening, we're giving somebody our full attention. We are tuning into what they're saying. We're silencing our minds. A lot of times when people are listening, they're actually just waiting for the other person to stop talking, right? And that's not listening. Listening is being fully present, taking it in, not judging, not giving advice, and simply reflecting back the facts and feelings of what the person heard. So listening is the golden key that opens the door to relationships. Okay. All right. So actually, the listening course that I took was through the Barry Miller University. They are a company that I think they still offer classes through the public, which it was excellent. It was an excellent class. But yeah, Bill can probably hook you up as well to different courses. I highly recommend it. There's also a lot of good YouTube videos out there that you can explore on active listening. There's a good paper. There's lots of good resources out there, but I really recommend it. And the key to listening is not just taking the course, it's actually practicing. So we then move into celebration and recognition. And in this class, we actually challenge what are you currently doing with celebration and recognition? And I think it's going back to what we talked about on intent. Okay. Are your celebration and recognition programs or practices working in your organization today? And what we want is we want to create this shift in mindset because people want to contribute and be appreciated, not controlled and rewarded. And so we want to move from a tactical rewards program administered by HR and delivered by leadership to something that's modeled by the leader, woven into the culture and delivered by everyone. So we want to create this shift in mindset regarding how we approach celebration and recognition. And we also challenge the thinking around where does benefit come in the expression of recognition, okay, or appreciation? And cultures that are rich in gratitude tend to be very successful. So we want to create this shift in mindset. And so we explore these different behaviors that are critical to creating a people-centric culture. And although I said leadership, here's the thing, like somebody said for the listening that it's part of a supervisory program, but the reality is everybody in the organization needs to get and have the opportunity to take a listening class. Like these things that we talk about are not just behaviors that leaders need. Everybody needs them. Everybody is a leader. Okay. So management systems. So core thing about management systems. First of all, I like to wait before I do this. Okay. If you think about I do this exercise, okay? I ask people to think about their to-do list, right? Think about your to-do list, and we can just do it mentally. If you think about your to-do list on your list today, oftentimes if you write it down, you'll go through your to-do list, and I'll ask people, I say, well, how many things on your list are about being a better listener, working on a relationship, being more reflective? So in our work, okay, we need to put as much emphasis on these things and developing these behaviors and approaches as we do on the tasks that we need to accomplish to get the work done. So there needs to be a balance there. And if there isn't, if we're not paying attention to that, it's not going to happen. So in our organizations, but I think there's actually two failures that we have here. In our organizations, we have often we build these strategies and business plans and to get to where we want to be. And often we focus totally on our business and we forget about the fact that we have to have strategy around building the culture and the culture that we want to create in our organization. And so as you have these plans, these strategic plans, is there a good balance between the two? Just like the to-do list, is there a balance between the business objectives as well as the culture that you're trying to create? Okay. So do you have that? And then I think the other thing that's really kind of interesting about how feedback, goal setting, feedback, and alignment fits into people-centric leadership is the need for people to every day go into work and know what's expected of them. I don't know, Bill, if you've experienced this or not, but in a lot of organizations that I go into and work with, the goal for the people doing the work is do as much as you can with what you got as best as you can. There's no clear goals or expectations established. Yeah, you agree? Good, yeah. Uh, Do you I think that's kind of amazing. And so that's really important. People want to come to work to do a good job, so they need to know what does that look like. And so we need to be a little bit better as organizations to establish what do you expect of me in this day. So we need both. So the last thing, and I want to touch on it very quickly, is just developing capability. How do we develop capability in our organizations? We need to make sure that we're supporting the growth, both structured development as well as informal. And so people grow when they are challenged. So what do we do in our organizations to actually challenge people? And so one of the best ways is to get them to think critically and to use more of a coaching approach and to be more coach-like as opposed to being more directive. And so we want a different approach. We want an approach that builds relationships because they're so important, but also engages the minds, gets people to think critically. Okay. And then if self-reflection is the key to growth, then the role as a leader is to help people reflect. So we want a coach to promote reflection and growth. And so we want people to adopt more of a coaching approach, okay, to their interactions with people, okay? And this is a standard approach that everybody uses. For me, the mantra is, what do you want? What are you doing to get what you want? How's it working? What can you do differently? What's your plan? When can I follow up? Okay. And then we want to approach any situation with humility and curiosity, okay? So how do we be more coach-like? When it comes to feedback, feedback is given as information, not as judgment, opinion, or advice. So we want to create this shift in how we approach things. It's subtle, but important. And clearly, if we think about all the different lean tools that are out there, these all actually support growth and development. Okay. Um, so, also, you said leader standard work. I think one thing that's really critical about leader standard work, and I would ask people is, integrated to your leader standard work, how much of this stuff do you have in it, right? How much of the behaviors and stuff, because those are things we need to build. So I think some organizations do it well out there. And that's actually what the whole AME community is about, hey, let me understand. So lean tools, they support this whole building of capability. And so if we do this right, everybody flourishes. And the reality is, okay, I'm kind of going to go back to that slide of control. You have to be the change you wish to see in the world. You're the person that creates the environment. You don't tell people how to do things. So be the change you wish to see in the world. So that is, normally it takes me a day and a half to go through all this content. So that's a very high level overview. When we actually do the course, there's lots of interactions, tons of exercises, really great discussion and sharing among participants. So it's a lot of fun. I love to do it. It's a lot of learning. I would like to invite everybody to the AME Milwaukee conference. I will be doing the course at the conference, but the AME is such an amazing conference. It's in Milwaukee this year. And there's a flyer that was posted. There is a discount code for you if you are interested in going. So I encourage you to come and share, learn, and grow. And that whole emphasis of the conference this year is people first, progress together. So it's really around this whole topic of people-centric leadership. So we've got great keynote speakers and presentations and idea exchange. So thank you, guys.